The year is 2016, and as I was browsing for streams to watch on twitch.tv, I noticed one of my favorite streamers, Worcester, was speedrunning a brand new category. A category so mesmerizing with every passing moment that I couldn't take my eyes off of it no matter how much my brain told me to stare at the wall. One moment, Worcester would be just biking around in the overworld. The next moment, he would take those same biking motions and flip the Pokemon world on its head with a visual spectacle of amazing glitches. And to share with you all that experience of euphoria I had watching this category for the first time, I'd like to break down what is known as a Pokemon Platinum any percent speedrun with glitches. When folks began to explore the possibility of speedrunning Pokemon Platinum with glitches for the first time, a lot of different Pokemon were thrown onto the table that had a ton of potential. Pokemon such as the 3 starters, Magnezone, Golduck, or Moltres seemed like pretty spicy candidates. But Worcester, the man who pioneered this speedrun, would start with Piplup. While Piplup was and is an incredibly dominant starter for even the glitchless runs of Platinum, this run isn't exactly where the revolutionary things happened. It was mostly just applying what Worcester knew about the strengths of Piplup and Empoleon in order to clear the game with a select few glitches to achieve a time of 3:23:02. What I want to focus on is the revolutionary speedrun that would boggle my mind that happened 22 days later on May 9th of 2016. During this run, Worcester would throw away any and all Pokemon suggestions I listed above and instead hunt down and use Tentacruel. The problem with obtaining Tentacruel was that it required Surf to encounter it under normal circumstances, but Worcester had a plan. So in order to reach the closest Tentacruel spawn as fast as possible, Worcester would begin his runs by using Chimchar. While Chimchar does have a pretty big weakness to Rorik's rock-type Pokemon, it could actually get rid of that weakness completely by evolving, then clear out the sections afterwards faster than Piplup or Turtwig ever could. Combine that with Worcester's knowledge on Gen 4 RNG manipulations, and he would begin to forge a path that gave him 0 encounters up to Jubilife City, as well as a mandatory Abracatch to save time on traveling throughout the world. This was due to teleporting being faster in many cases, considering how many places could be skipped with glitches. And so, with Abra and Chimchar blazing past Rorik, all Worcester needed now was the trusty bicycle. With access to the bicycle, Worcester could go over specific spots on the map to cause some really weird stuff to happen in the overworld, like loading in what seems to be Jubilife City over Sand Gym Town, followed by turning Route 219 into a giant black abyss in order to be on top of the water without Surf. Then with a single use of the honey item, Worcester would spawn a legendary RNG manipulated level 40 Tentacruel that he would refer to as a god. Now I understand Tentacruel might seem like a weird choice considering it's more of a tank than an offensive Pokemon, but the massive level gap compared to Chimchar made switching to Tentacruel an absolute no-brainer, especially with its amazing ability Clear Body to mitigate any issues it might have from stat lowering moves. As for the glitch Worcester used to access and snag Tentacruel, speedrunners call this process tweaking, which is a glitch that lets you access places you shouldn't normally be able to by going over certain load lines in a loading zone in a specific pattern fast enough. For games like the original Diamond and Pearl, you can use this trick to go directly to the Hall of Fame with only 2 badges to your name. But when using this glitch in Platinum, you'll notice that it acts very differently, because unlike Diamond and Pearl, there seems to be multiple pieces of collision programmed into the void for Pokemon Platinum, which actually makes a ton of badges impossible to skip. So what can be skipped then exactly? Well, if we check out this map of the many areas we could explore normally in a glitchless speedrun of Platinum, then black out the parts where we can skip, you'd find out that you can skip a total of 1 badge? Okay, let me explain real quick. So when it comes to beating Pokemon Platinum with glitches, the collision within the void limits us greatly, so much so that the only gym you can truly skip is Maylene's fighting type gym, since the HM for Fly isn't a requirement normally needed to progress. And a lot of this comes down to how much you have to rely on HMs like Rock Smash, Strength, Surf, Waterfall, and Rock Climb inside of Victory Road, since speedrunners have found 0 ways of skipping any part of Victory Road within the last 7 years. But when we focus on the sections that you can skip, you'll notice it formulates a speedrun where glitches glitches are more of a balance of fun ways to skip over the most trivial sections of the game, rather than shattering it into an unrecognizable state that a lot of speedruns end up in when glitches take things way too far. The first of these glitches happens after grabbing Tentacruel, teleporting out of the water, then beating up the third gym leader, Fantina. Following a trip to Route 209, the first of many big tweaks is performed in order to get the choice specs item and the Surf HM as quickly as possible to sweep the game with. Under normal circumstances, you would have to beat multiple gyms and talk to Cynthia in order to pass some Psyducks to get to the town carrying Surf. But instead of all that nonsense, Worcester would just do this. Pretty cool, right? But unfortunately for this initial glitch run, every single tweak had yet to be discovered, so we would have to wait a bit longer until Wake's Gym to see the next tweak. The Pastoria tweak in particular let Worcester enter Wake's Gym without loading in a rival battle versus Barry. And as an added hilarious side effect to this tweak, once you've beaten and exited the gym, Barry would phase in and out of some trees since he's not really supposed to be standing in the spot that you put him in after the tweak. The reason this happens is because the game wants Barry to walk up and down a set amount of tiles. So even though he's in a different position, Barry will still walk the same amount of tiles in the same direction that he would normally walk towards after the gym. Following the hilarious events in Pastoria, Worcester would then tweak straight into Lake Valor, which appears as if it had gone through the lengthy discussion inside a Canalave where Team Galactic blows up the lake. Now the reason the lake is in this state is essentially due to Game Freak cutting a few corners within the story flags on their earlier generations of Pokemon games, which is quite a common occurrence from generations 1 through 5. And who can blame them? You really shouldn't be here anyways. But it ends up being quite convenient for us speedrunners since the battle against Saturn inside of Lake Valor just so happens to be the flag that unlocks Mars' appearance in Lake Verity, which then unlocks another flag that stops a galactic run from blocking your path inside of Mount Coronet leading to Snow Point City. And this particular story event here was the final bits of flag standing in Worcester's path of finishing the game as he would press forward with Tentacruel beating Byron and Candace and then teleport back to perform one final tweak in order to fight Faulkner extremely early. The tweak to get into Sunyshore City would be the granddaddy of all possible tweaks, because normally the distortion world would be what unlocks Sunyshore City from the supposed blackout that they're having. But by having the ability to get into Sunyshore City this early, you could skip the entire sequence surrounding the Team Galactic base, Mount Coronet, Cyrus, Giratina, and the entire distortion world. Crazy to say, but skipping the story events is an entire 30 minutes saved on its own when looking at how long it takes a glitchless speedrun to beat all of this content. And with the power of Tentacruel, choice specs, and Surf, the rest of the game would be beaten without a single glitch from here on out. All it would require was just a bit of X item setup from Worcester to get through Victory Road, Barry, the Elite Four, and Cynthia, and he would achieve a time slightly above the 3-hour barrier, which would be easily broken by him less than a month later, lowering it all the way to a 2:49. This was a phenomenal start to such a fascinating speedrun to watch, but unfortunately for the route, it would take nearly 2 years and someone beating Worcester's world record for any drastic changes to happen. This would all start with a couple of brand new tweaks that were added to save a few minutes of time throughout the run. The first and second tweaks saved nearly 2 minutes by going underneath certain trainers to completely skip them, while the final tweak got Worcester into Route 222 next to Sunyshore City for an early second Tentacruel. Weird, right? But as it turns out, catching 2 Tentacruels was more worth it than just one, since the early sections ran much smoother than Monferno, while the second Tentacruel being level 50 instead of 40 meant that it could beat the middle and end sections faster and more fluidly than the original level 40 Tenta. Super weird how it all worked out, but it eventually got Worcester a time of 2:43.29. And before long, the double Tentacruel route was eventually improved upon by some small additions like adding even more tweaks before a brand new Pokemon would be put into the spotlight. You remember that old list of Pokemon that folks were looking into when this route was first being pieced together? Well, it turns out that one of them was actually proven to be better than Tentacruel. The theory behind this new Pokemon was that getting something a bit less out of the way than the first Tentacruel would save enough time to either skip both Tentacruel or just one of them, and Worcester would once again be the first one to bring this route to life. As per usual, Chimchar was chosen to destroy the early game, but but this time, Abra would be completely skipped in order to take advantage of a sick new tweak that saved a ton of time. We'll get into that one later. But for now, the more important tweak starts immediately after gaining the bike in Eterna City. This tweak lets you access the water on Route 205, where you could manipulate a level 40 Golduck. The big reason why Golduck is so appealing over Tentacruel is not only because of the shorter distance you have to travel to grab it compared to Tentacruel, but also because of the slightly higher offensive stats. This boost in power would easily carry speedrunners past Hearthome City, where a brand new tweak would obliterate any chance of Abra ever being useful again, which is what I call the super tweak on Route 209 that carries you all the way inside of Veilstone City. This got speedrunners directly into the warehouse that gives us Fly without ever having to battle the Galactic Double Grunt. In order to use Fly, however, speedrunners would need to beat Maylene's gym instead of skipping it, which is an extra 2 battle. But surprisingly, the ability to fly around the map more than made up for the amount of time you would be forced to travel by only using teleport. And since we would now be grabbing every single badge, we can officially count this as a real speedrun in the eyes of many YouTube commenters that hate glitches. And while all this does save a ton of time on its own, Golduck unfortunately couldn't solo the game faster than level 50 Tentacruel. So the plan would now be to combo Golduck and Tentacruel for the foreseeable future, which helped folks like Worcester and Rubentus obliterate the world record below 2 hours and 40 minutes. But this right here would not be where the story ends for the route history of Pokemon Platinum, as there is one final addition to all this madness. Once again, the route would start with Chimchar, but this time with a massive twist. Instead of gaining an advantage on Rorik by evolving to Monferno, the extra fights needed to evolve would be skipped altogether, and speedrunners would now enter Rorik's gym with a Chimchar. The tricky part of doing this would be that Chimchar has a 100% chance to die on every single turn. So in order to even have a chance of making it alive, a battle manipulation would need to be invented. And that's exactly what speedrunners did by saving, changing the date, then timing the start of the battle against Rorik in order for this right here to happen. So how this manipulation works is a speedrunner isn't always likely to hit the same exact seed every single time you go for a manipulation. So they will have to map out many different possible fights with the overall goal of getting the fastest fight possible. The current world record holder, Line Was Here, got a seed that would cause Geodude to miss a killer rock throw 4 times in a row in order for Chimchar to be able to Ember, X Attack, Rock Smash hit into Rock Smash crit. Onix would also be forced into a couple of Rock Smash misses, all while having its defense drop by Rock Smash constantly, a couple of Leers, followed by a single Scratch. This might seem weird on the surface to go for Scratch, but any other move would have likely meant the death of Chimchar. So instead, Scratch let Line survive on exactly 1 HP into a free heal, followed by a swift Leer into a KO on Onix. With the final Pokemon Cranidos coming into play, all Line would need to win now is a click of the move Rock Smash to crit into Oblivion. And this was all figured out through testing multiple seeds through an emulator, then hacking Metronome onto Chimchar in order to figure out exactly what seeds speedrunners were landing on their console. But this wasn't the only benefit to this manipulation, because speedrunners could now drag this manipulation all the way to Eterna City and guarantee a Golduck strong enough to solo the game with. However, the big thing about Golduck is that it's apparently still slightly slower than level 50 Tentacruel, but a lot less consistent than Golduck because of the fog route on Route 210. This is all thanks to Golduck's ability Cloud 9, which gets rid of all the effects of weather inside of battle, including the deep fog. But another weird quirk that added on top of this is that Tentacruel has a much slower send out animation than Golduck, which ends up making both the Golduck solo route and the Golduck plus Tentacruel route extremely close to one another. And as of this video, my friend Line Was Here is rocking a world record of 237.54 by using those crazy Chimchar strategies into the solo Golduck route, marking the end of Pokemon Platinum 80% speedrun history. If you enjoyed this deep dive into speedrun history like this, consider subscribing. Check out all the runners in the description, and I'll see you next time for some more Pokemon speedrunning news and content.